What's happening, guys? So this video is my post-ride wrap-up of my time with the Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RR. Guys, as phenomenal as this motorcycle is to look at, the riding experience is even better. So let's dive into it. The specifications of this motorcycle: just shy of 1200 cc's, 180 horsepower, and about 92 pound-feet of torque. But it's how this motorcycle makes power. It's got 92 pound-feet of torque, yes, but it seems like it's available everywhere in the RPM band. This motorcycle is not peaky in its power delivery. Yeah, it'll make about 180 horsepower, but again, that power is extremely linear. It is larger in displacement than a normal 1000cc motorcycle, and that is evident once you start cracking into the throttle. So it's a much more rich riding experience. And as far as handling is concerned, this motorcycle, once you set it into a corner, it is absolutely rock solid. And with 4 different riding modes of rain, road, sport, and track, I didn't have any feeling that there was ever any amount of disconnect between myself and the road. And you wouldn't expect it. It's a fully electronic Öhlins suspension, and every one of those different riding modes has a different suspension setting, with obviously rain being very soft with a very soft throttle, and then through the rest of those settings gets more and more aggressive. Of course, track, well, there's not any nannies to worry about too much there, and the thing will power wheelie pretty much at will, which you would expect out of this type of motorcycle. But I kept the motorcycle in sport while I was riding it. There's some nannies that allows you to have a little bit of fun, but it will bring the reins in on you. And, well, should you need to. But I never found that they were ever being intrusive. And again, this motorcycle is dead solid and dead set once you get this thing into a corner. Rolling onto the throttle through sweepers, this bike wanted to do nothing but scat. And that's one of the most fun parts about bikes like this. With such a linear power curve, you never got the feeling that the bike was going to come into power at some point, maybe unpredictably. You could run the thing to redline without any surprises, and that made me very confident in this power plant. So much so that the more time that I spent with this bike, the more time I wanted to spend with this motorcycle. The more I rode it, the more impressed I became. I lost all preconceived notions about that total electronic suspension and started to think that, well, maybe it is worth the extra money. And speaking of money, these motorcycles are not cheap. You're looking at least $20,000 for one of these bikes, but look at how much motorcycle that you get for the money. Plus, I don't know that you could do better as far as aesthetics. This motorcycle is drop dead gorgeous, and no pictures will do one of these machines justice. So let's say you are in the market for a motorcycle like this. Maybe you're coming from a background that's more leader class, or maybe a background that's maybe more track oriented. Well, this motorcycle is going to offer up a few things that are going to be familiar to you. Again, the handling is absolutely dead solid. The power is certainly there, with a little bit more bias towards lower RPM grunt, at least if you compare it to some of the more modern leader class super sports that are out today. It's got all the rider contraptions and you could ever want. So what's not to like? Well, I can tell you this, it is a bit of a committed riding position. Now, it's nowhere near as bad as maybe a CBR 1000 or a ZX10, but it is still fairly committed. You're definitely on your wrist, so to speak, when you're riding this bike. But I will say this, it's very similar to the GSXR 1000, which is widely regarded to be the least aggressive of the Japanese leader class sport bikes. This bike is maybe 10% less aggressive than that. So still a sport bike riding position, not really analogous with what you might consider to be a sport naked, even though this bike does not have a full fairing. I guess you could mainly think of it like a sport naked in that respect, but it does still have clip-ons, so it's kind of hard to find a direct line of sight to compare it to. But again, if you could imagine a GSX-R 1000 that's just a little bit less aggressive, that's what that Speed Triple Double R is going to feel like when you sit on it. So would I buy one? I guess that's the big takeaway. Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely pick one up. But there's a motorcycle that Triumph offers that I do want to try that I wasn't able to throw a leg over, and that is the Speed Triple RS. Now, it really is more of a sport naked, or in this case, a hyper naked with an actual flat bar and a little bit less aggressive riding position. Has all the power, but it doesn't have any of that electronic suspension. It's a normal, I guess you could say, customary, if you will, suspension layout. I think I would maybe be a little bit more inclined to take a look at that bike, but golly, it's one of those situations where you could get an RS, but you'd always be looking over at that Double R. It just is that good, and it is that pretty to look at. So if you haven't had an opportunity and you get the opportunity to ride one, jump on it, because I have a feeling you may walk away with, well, let's just say you may want to keep your wallet and your checkbook at home. Just bring your ID and your insurance. But with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Post up your comments. Let me know what you think. We'll catch you on the next one. Adios.